on behalf of ICLE. And as you will have just heard, we are recording this session as well to make it available to those who unfortunately were not able to join us this afternoon. So the topic for the webinar this afternoon is a circular economy for textiles in cities. And this was identified as a most important topic by the signatories of the declaration, which is how we are determining the topics for each of these. We know how significant at the local and regional level textiles is as a material stream, not least given the upcoming regulatory requirements for January 2025 for separated textiles collection, which of course in certain cities and certain countries has been moved forward indeed as well. So what we want to hear from today are the support partners of the Circular Cities Declaration with an overview of some of the guidance and good practice that's happening from across Europe. If everybody could mute their speakers when they're not speaking, that would be useful. So yes, we will hear from examples from the support partners of the CCD first off, and then we have a block of presentations from 3 CCD signatories who are doing really interesting work in different areas of the textiles value chain. Then we'll have an opportunity to break up into different working groups to discuss in more detail. So if I can get my slides working. Just first before that, some small housekeeping rules. Very useful for understand who everybody is. So you have the function in Zoom to change your name to include the name of the organization within it, which of course is helpful for those of you who don't, those of us who don't know who you are. So please, if we could all change our names so we can indicate which organization we're working from. As already mentioned, the webinar is being recorded. The recording of the webinar, together with also slides and some notes, will be made available afterwards. Links relevant will be put into the chat throughout the webinar, but those will also be included afterwards in the minutes as well. So you don't need to make a note of everything as we're going through. Very helpful if you stay muted while others are speaking, as we do obviously get some background noise. Please feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions during the presentation. There will hopefully be the opportunities at the end of the presentation to ask them directly. We'll have to check with the timing of that, however. And if there are unanswered questions in the chat, then we can also try to get you an answer after the webinar has finished if there isn't time. If you're having any technical problems during the meeting, you can either write directly to the hosts in the chat, or you can send an email to my colleague Dominic, who should respond quickly to this. Okay, so the agenda we've already been through. The first block is on an introduction to circular textiles from our support partners. We will then hear the presentations from the signatories. And then, as mentioned, we're going to split up into 3 breakout groups, looking at different aspects of the textiles value chain. One of those looking at a strategic approach to circular textiles. The second looking at behavioral change and campaigns. And the final group looking specifically at textiles collection, sorting and recycling. And you'll each have the opportunity to choose which group you wish to go to. Then we'll all come back together 5 minutes before the end to have a quick round of reflections on the breakout discussions and talk about upcoming activities as well. But before we kick off with all of this, I wanted to give you a quick update on where we are with the CCD itself. So first off, we have a number of new signatories that have signed the declaration since the last webinar that we had. Our Belgian contingent is growing to challenge that of Portugal, Spain and Finland. So we now have 6 Belgian signatories, with the city of Bruges and also Temse having signed recently. In Germany, the city of Berlin recently signed the declaration, and we're hopeful in the next short while that Düsseldorf will also be signing this as well. In Luxembourg, we have 2 further signatories at the other end of the population scale. We have Esch-sur-Alzette, the second biggest city in Luxembourg, and Sanem as well. And in Spain, we have Rivas-Vacia-Madrid, which is one of the boroughs of the city of Madrid. And I believe yesterday, Fingal County Council in Ireland also signed the declaration. So there are a number of new signatories coming on board our little informal group, which is great to see. One of the other very important activities that hopefully a number of you have seen recently, we published finally the Circular Cities Declaration Report 2022. So that was published in February of this year and circulated to the group. So hopefully everyone has a chance to see that. The report contains over 40, no, I think exactly 40 city reports from the different signatories outlining the different activities that have been undertaken over the reporting period. And as well as this, it has an introductory section which goes through some of the main trends that we've analysed and that we've observed within the report sent, as well as some of the challenges that have been faced. The main body of the report is, as I say, an overview of the different city interventions that were indicated in the reports that were provided, and it includes a number of best practice examples dotted through the text. So if you've not yet had a chance to look at that, please do so. It's a very interesting read, and it's getting a lot of traction across Europe at the moment. Yeah, and as I will very briefly touch on at the end of the session today, what we're planning to do next with this report, because of course this is the one for 2022. We have to look at the report for 2023 now. Good. Okay. Well, that's enough from my side. Let's hear something about textiles. So, as mentioned, we have two support partners with us this afternoon, who are going to give us overview presentations of different aspects of circular textiles and the role of cities within that process. And the first of these is coming from Circle Economy, where Ola Bakowska is going to provide us with some background information on the topic and talk about a strategic approach to circular textiles. Okay, so I think at this moment I will stop sharing my screen and I will allow you to share yours. Ola, over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you for the introduction. Congrats on releasing the report. And yes, indeed, I will be presenting a short update from our side. Myself, I'm a strategist at the Circular Textiles program at Circle Economy. But as many of you, I hope, are familiar, we also have a dedicated cities program, and I will show you a couple of projects on the crossroads of these two activities of ours. And let's go to the full screen. This is still loading for me. I hope it's coming soon. All right. So Circle Economy is, as I hope many of you are familiar, we are an impact organization based in Amsterdam. I'm somewhere here, and many of my colleagues are on the slide. We are based in Amsterdam, but we definitely see ourselves as a global impact organization. So we build our outreach and projects to go beyond the Netherlands, of course, and beyond the European Union as well. And we empower businesses, cities, and nations with practical and scalable solutions to put circular economy into action. And as I said, I'm representing the textiles program, but we work across different sectors and across different activities. We envision circular economy to be a system that ensures that planet and people can thrive. And you will see that I will present today the projects more related to indeed material flows, but also employment and more socioeconomic impacts. These are the different programs that we have at Circular Economy. So as just mentioned, there's textiles, but there's also finance, built environment, capital equipment coalition. We've got a great digital team focused on metrics and being engaged in circular transition indicators and circular jobs initiative. This is a snapshot of our track record as an organization. And to introduce you to our work in the textiles program was established in 2014 with a mission to achieve a zero waste textile industry. And that means working on both sides of this metaphorical textile waste mountain, metaphorical, but also very real textiles waste mountain. So reducing the existing mountain by enabling data, technology, and infrastructure that is needed to be able to reduce this mountain, but also prevention. So changing the mindset, but also building the skill set for businesses and cities and nations to adopt circular design strategies. Great. Our approach could be summarized in these 3 simple steps. You might recognize our work of different city scans that we conduct. And in a summary, a scan is these 3 different steps of analyzing, acting, and scaling. So it's cross-sectoral, applied research and translation of the key findings into actionable and scalable solutions. Then it's acting through different methodologies and roadmaps or leading circular pilots. And a lot of my work personally is capacity building, so scaling, training programs, knowledge tools, and these things that we hope are more actionable. Oh, I see there was a lot of links shared in the chat. Yes, I'd be happy if you have a minute to deep dive into any of those. We believe in collaboration, and ICLE is a partner of circular economy for many years. But of course, as I said, we build partnerships within Europe and beyond to scale our impact. Challenge of the linear textile industry in a few words. Yes, so our current linear economy, of course, follows the take, make, waste model, which we're all very familiar with. And we see the fashion industry as a very much poster child of this way of thinking and working. So it's extracting natural resources to turn them into consumable goods, into products, and a lot of waste or a lot of disposal, which, as many of you know, currently only 1% of textile waste is being turned into actual textile applications. And this percentage has, although there's a lot of innovation in this space, this percentage has not grown over the recent years. And also, you know, beyond numbers, what does it mean for our economies, for our societies, and for our planet? So, of course, the linear economy is clearly contributing to climate crisis, growing inequalities, and also accelerated biodiversity loss. And circular economy, we really explore all these topics to be able to apply circular economy principles, not just for the sake of applying them, but also to be able to verify if circular economy really is a solution to mitigate climate crisis, maybe tackle these inequalities, and perhaps even mitigate some of the biodiversity loss. So as we all know, it's time to redesign and rethink the current system. So what is the opportunity for circularity? And yes, circular economy provides tools to achieve prosperity within planetary boundaries. And something I will be speaking about later is the creation of circular jobs. So if you would just follow the linear example from sourcing through production, use into waste, you would only create a certain number of jobs. And we try to quantify, you know, how does that differ if you employ people into maintenance, reuse business models, refurbishment or repair business models, and of course, recycling. And the core principles of circular economy, as I'm sure I don't need to repeat, it's to design out waste and pollution, keep products and materials in use, and regenerate natural systems. And since 2018, we are calculating a global circularity metric. We also calculate this metric for cities and nations, as I said, in the form of a city scan, for example, or CGR for different nations. But our most prominent report is CGR Global. And this year, the result was, I would say a strong reality check. And the result was that the global economy is currently 7.2% circular. We have seen a little bit higher percentage in the previous years. And what does it mean for cities? So, of course, cities are at the epicenter of the current global linear system, which is slowly transitioning into more circular solutions that we'll hear more about later today. So 2/3 of global energy is used in cities. Over 50% of global population lives in urban areas. 80% of the GDP is coming from cities and citizens. And the resources that we calculate their calculation we calculate their usage in the CGR Global, and 70% of them are also used in the cities by their citizens. So the future of circular fashion is also urban. It's not only urban, but it strongly relies on circular ecosystems that, of course, need to involve cities, industries, and consumers. So more and more consumers are living in the cities and disposing of textiles in the cities. 70% of the cities are the places where we can see the fastest growth in sale. Here it's indicated by the demands for women's wear, but it's probably could be translated into other textile consumption as well. And what is more, mega cities will not dominate. So I don't actually know what that was meant to mean. Yes, so cities are the enablers for change, because that's where we can see extraction and production, distribution and retail, consumption and post-use, and different post-use activities. What I mean here is collection, sorting, resale, recycling. And our big project in that sector was a Sorting for Circularity project, which engaged 7 different European markets and looking at their sorting and recycling capacities. And cities can also benefit. So city level governance, of course, has got impact on the economy of the entire country. And we do measure environmental, social, and socioeconomic impacts that can be generated by circular interventions in cities. Our approach, or more specifically, example of our past work. So I was referring to something like circular fashion ecosystems. An example of that work can be seen in the project conducted by actually Maya, who is meant to be speaking here today. And I'll make sure to share with you her contact details and my contact details to actually be able to deep dive into that, or perhaps get in touch. But it's a project that was conducted in partnership with Institute of Positive Fashion in the UK, and created 2 case studies for London and Leeds in partnership with local stakeholders from London and Leeds who are already looking at circular interventions there, and to map what would be the blueprint for ecosystems in these 2 specific cities, and looking for the frames of donut economics, first time applied to the fashion sector. Second one is what was called Circle Carbon Scan. So we do not only scan the capacities of a city to become more circular, but also what does it mean in terms of climate change and climate change indicators. So combining climate and circular economy agenda for textiles. That's something that happened in Glasgow with Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. The city's team has conducted a circular carbon scan, which explored the links between circular strategies and how they can result in reaching the net zero ambition of the city. And that included a case studies on textiles, but not only, there was also food and drink manufacturing, events industry, and the built environment. So both the industries that we are familiar with, but also those that we are still building our expertise in. Baseline assessment, an example of a project for Montreal. So Montreal has got the ambition to be a zero-waste city by 2030 and carbon neutral by 2050. And very helpful on this pathway was a Circle City Scan, which is basically an assessment of your starting point and then identifies the sectors that will be key in this transition. And again, for Montreal, one of these sectors was textiles, alongside mobility, built environment, and food systems. And I think the most actionable result was the narrowed down to a short list of 8 potential circular actions on a roadmap for Montreal. And another type of work, putting circular textiles to work. This was an assessment created for the Netherlands, looking at the employment effects of different circular scenarios in the Netherlands. So with the ambition to be fully circular economy by 2050, the Netherlands wanted to look at specifically the textile sector. What is the employment today? And with the uptake of more circular solutions, what would be the employment potential? So we have looked at 3 different scenarios, which I will quickly present, which was changing the consumption patterns, prioritizing reuse, and finally recycling and fiber processing. And very quickly, the results overall, on average, the biggest potential we could see was the 25 increase in jobs potential of the textile sector in the Netherlands compared to the business as usual linear scenario. And the most prominent was actually reuse. And I must say that reuse also included the repairs, followed by changing consumption patterns, because we see Netherlands as mostly a a consumer of textiles and where citizens consume and dispose of textiles. But of course, with the hope to become a fully circular economy, we also have to mobilize recycling, but that's not as prominent in terms of generating more circular jobs. And that's all I have prepared for you today. And I hope, I think now it's not the time for the Q&A actually, according to the new agenda, but I hope to discuss this in the breakout session with you all. And I'll share our emails just to be able to, contact us directly. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ola. And yes, thanks also for stepping in at the last minute to replace Maya, who was supposed to be here. So this is really very, very helpful. Yeah, my colleague Chiara has put several interesting publications in the chat that you can all have a look at. We'll share details of those in the minutes afterwards as well. There will be a Q&A session after the next presentation too, but if anybody has any direct questions they would like to pose to Ola, we have a few minutes now. If not at this stage, then I think we can move across straight away to the next presentation. And as mentioned, you can drop your questions in the chat as we go. So now we're going to look at the topic of behavioral change and business models. Sarah from ReLondon is here to talk us through this. And I believe, Chiara, you're going to work the slides for this. So over to you, Sarah.
Great. Thanks a lot to Simon and the team for the invitation and opportunity to speak today about the work that we do in London, both to support fashion businesses to become more circular, but also our behaviour change campaigns to influence how citizens consume and dispose of textiles. By way of introduction, my name is Sarah Malone. I'm a Senior Advisor and Textiles Lead at ReLondon. And if we move on to the next slide, today I'm going to quickly go through on the next slide. Today I'm going to go through who we are at ReLondon, ReLondon's SME Business Support Programme, focusing specifically on fashion, one of ReLondon's citizen behaviour change campaigns called Love Not Landfill, and then other textiles activities that we run in the city. And I'm going to be talking for about 15 minutes, which will be followed by the Q&A, which Simon just mentioned. So if questions can be saved for the Q&A, that would be great. So if we move on to the next slide. So who is ReLondon? Well, we're a partnership of the Mayor of London and London's boroughs to improve waste and resource management in the capital and to accelerate our transition to a low carbon circular city. And it's our mission to revolutionise our relationship with stuff. And we do this by working with businesses to embrace circularity. We offer practical advice to London's boroughs at a local and a city level. And we run campaigns to educate Londoners about waste prevention and recycling, but also to normalise circular behaviours. And as an organisation, we focus on 5 key sectors, from fashion, food, plastics, electricals, right up to construction. And this means that we work with businesses and run campaigns across all these different sectors. But today, of course, I'll be focusing solely on textiles. So if we move on to the next slide. So that was who we are and our priorities. But why is a circular economy and the role of business in supporting our transition to a circular economy so important? And therefore, why do we even run an SME business support programme in London? Well, tackling waste and material use is key to tackling climate change and the transition to a more sustainable future. And that's because 45% of total global greenhouse gas emissions come from all the food, the materials and the products that we make, use and consume every day, as well as the management of land. And so this transition must be led by SME businesses in London, who actually represent a huge 99% of businesses. So they're actually both responsible for the issue, generating more than half of business waste in the city, but also the starting point for innovation and tailored solutions. And that's why ReLondon's business transformation team empowers London's small and medium-sized businesses to transform the way that they do business. So translating circular economy principles into business opportunities. And we do this by helping both traditional businesses that are new to the circular economy to help them understand and adopt circular practices into their organisation, as well as circular economy startups, so to strengthen and scale their pre-existing circular business models. So that's why businesses' role in the circular economy is so important. But if we move on to the next slide, why do textiles SMEs and small businesses generally need our help? Well, our business transformation program exists to sort of demonstrate that business case for circular economy businesses and to support SMEs in London. And we do this because firstly, there's no one size fits all solution. So becoming a regenerative waste-free business is not one size fits all and requires rethinking centuries of business practice. So it can actually feel quite risky to embark on this journey or invest in innovative circular solutions. And so we offer tools, guidance, and connections needed for pioneers to successfully scale their solutions. Secondly, global solutions don't always apply locally. So every city is unique in its culture, geography, and infrastructure. So this affects the attractiveness of new business models such as rental or reuse, and the practicality or cost of key operations such as remanufacturing, composting, or redistribution. And that's why we translate how to adapt to emerging solutions locally. And thirdly, small businesses won't change on their own in isolation. So it's quite clear small businesses lack the time, they don't have the resources or the leverage needed to identify and scale waste reduction solutions. So they actually want inspiration from other similar businesses that are already paving the way. And so what we do is we offer practical recommendations, harnessing collective experiences, and create a sort of hub for businesses trying regenerative practices so that they can learn from each other as well as from us. So that's a bit of context as to why businesses are important in supporting the transition to a circular economy and why they need our help. On the next slide, we're going to show how we actually help SMEs. So London-based businesses can register to join our circular community at our website, and they're vetted and signposted to the right support for their needs. And we've got 3 types of support. So the first is advice. So our in-house team of expert business advisors offer dedicated guidance to help businesses grow sustainably and responsibly while taking advantage of the circular economy. So our advice helps businesses redesign their business models and validates the commercial and environmental benefits of circular initiatives. So the second is grants. So we actually structure and administer grant programs to achieve outcomes across economic resilience, job creation, and reduction in waste and emissions. And this is both borough specific, but also London-wide. And finally, we support with connections. So we organise carefully curated matchmaking events informed by a needs assessment, which actually aims to connect circular innovators to investors, buyers and boroughs, and each event that we organise is focused on a specific theme or sector. And this is actually complemented by our recently launched Circular Economy Matchmaker, which I think the link will be shared shortly in the chat function. And this platform sort of joins the dots between London's circular businesses with like-minded businesses, investors and local authorities to create a community for sustainable value and growth. Okay, so what does this look like in practice? So who have we helped? So one example of a fashion business that we've supported is Birdsong, which you can see on the screen, who is a sustainable fashion studio based in East London. So they received support from London's business transformation team and from the Mayor of London's Green New Deal Fund. And what they decided to do was to launch a new repair service to extend the lifetime of garments. And through this trial, they've been able to refine the types of repairs on offer and actually confirm that the offer is attractive to their clients and well received by makers. And they've also formed strategic partnerships with logistic providers such as Repack, Schwab and Sojo. And as an organisation, they now plan to offer lifetime repairs on their items and actually scale this offer. Another example on the next slide is Cucumber Clothing, which is a sustainable female leisure and sleepwear brand who actually saw an opportunity to diversify their offer and increase their customer base by adding 2 circular business models to their existing business. So giving their customers different ways to access their products. So Read London awarded the business a grant of £10,000 from the Mayor of London's Green New Deal Fund, as well as support from an ERDF funded business transformation programme to create and pilot what they were calling a loan to own scheme and a second-hand platform that would actually allow garments to be rented for a short period and, if returned, be resold as pre-loved. So in the 6-month pilot, Cucumber Clothing were able to rent or sell second-hand 37 garments, which helped to make sure that they were used to their full potential, while actually also increasing profitability per garment by up to 13%. So that's just 2 examples of the businesses that we supported. If anyone's interested in seeing more examples, they're all available on a website link that will be shared during the session. But looking at the programme as a whole, we've had great impact. So we've actually supported over 380 London SMEs with a balance of circular innovators disrupting the market, as well as everyday businesses embracing the opportunities presented by the circular economy. We've delivered over 6,900 hours of support to help businesses successfully design, trial and grow circular initiatives. We've created and safeguarded around 600 jobs as a result of growth in businesses that we've supported to date. And finally, thank you. And finally, we've saved 57,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions by just 6 innovators alone who are finding solutions to tackle food waste, whether that be avoidance or redistribution of waste. So that's just a bit of a snapshot of the achievements so far with the programme. So that was a very quick overview of why we supported business support programmes here in London, the type of support the programme provides and our achievements so far. If we move on to the next slide, as I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, as an organisation, we aim to catalyse transformational change by both supporting businesses, but also by running campaigns to educate Londoners about waste prevention and recycling. And one example specific to textiles is our Love Not Landfill campaign, which is a non-profit campaign run by us to encourage fast fashion fans to buy secondhand, swap, recycle and give more to charity. And what we aim to do is to essentially encourage 16 to 24-year-old Londoners never to throw an unwanted item of clothing in the bin, but also educate and empower young people to become activists and influencers amongst their peers and make sustainable changes to their own clothing habits. So if we move on to the next slide, how we do this is we engage young people in a series of events, initiatives and activities, which aim to increase understanding of how clothes actually impact the environment to try to incentivise action. And our key messages are ultimately to recycle all clothes, never throw them in the bin, by using the clothes bank given to charity and swapping. And when you do come to buy, if you need to buy something, buy secondhand or care for, mend and repair your existing clothes if that's why you need something new. So that's a bit about Love Not Landfill, the strategy and the messaging behind the campaign. If we move on the next slide, what this means in practice is that we've got 3 strands of activity. So the first being a pop-up shops and swaps, which we host with different partners. So for example, we've actually got a pop-up shop coming up in London at the end of June. And over the course of the campaign, which started in 2018, we've attracted almost 10,000 people to a total of 3 pop-up events and partnered with influential brands such as Topshop, Depop, Vanish and Westfield. And we actually find that our pop-up shops are key for reach and engagement with our Love Not Landfill audience. And through these pop-up shops, we work with influencers and charity partners to sort of attract press attention and bring in a heavy footfall from young Londoners to sort of encourage them to shop secondhand and swap their clothes. So on the next slide is the second strand of activity, which is our digital presence. So the campaign focuses on Instagram and increasingly TikTok, where we've built a combined following of over 10,000 on our own social media channels. And we work with influencers to create a steady stream of styling, thrifting and charity shopping content to help inspire young Londoners to do the same. For example, we've gained support of high-profile celebrities such as Stacey Dooley and some other influencers. So on the next slide, our third activity, our clothing bank. So given a huge volume of Londoners' clothing actually end up in the bin, the campaign has a series of clothing banks across London and collaborates with artists to create eye-catching designs to engage young Londoners and nudge them into having better clothing behaviours. And through these banks, we've actually saved over 16,000 kilograms of clothing from landfill or incineration since launching our clothing banks in 2019. So that was a very quick overview of the Love Not Landfill campaign and the SME Business Support Programme. So I've got two more slides giving a quick overview of some of our other textiles activities we are working on as an organisation. So the first is London Repair Week, which we run every year to encourage uptake of repair. And during this week, organisations run numerous hands-on repair sessions, online tutorials, and discussions with those at the forefront of the repair movement. So the campaign started in 2020 and we've run it every year since, and the aim is to give Londoners practical skills and encourage greater use of existing repair services. It also builds brand loyalty for businesses with customers. So last year, we directly engaged over 800 people at over 40 events, and our content reached over 1.3 million Instagram and Facebook accounts. But we actually held our latest Repair Week a few weeks ago, so from the 20th to 26th of March, where we had over 100 events. Not all of these are textiles related, but a fair portion are linked to textiles. And it was a huge success with events including things like garment upcycling and repair workshops, survival sewing skills, presentations, button workshops, and many others. Again, the web link should be shared in the chat and you can have a look at all of our events that we ran a few weeks ago if it's of interest. So finally, on the last slide, another strand of activity that ReLondon's working on is actually textiles related research, which is an area that I'm most involved with. And what we're doing is we're working on a joint UKRI Circular Economy Hub textiles research project with the University College London and Circular Economy. And the aim is to examine the material flows and consumption-based emissions associated with London's fashion supply chain. So we actually did the same for food back in 2021, which informed citywide actions to reduce food-related consumption-based emissions and food waste through London's Food Flagship Initiative. And we're really excited that we can do the same for the fashion sector, as through the research, we will have generated the evidence to make sure that as a city, our efforts are focused on areas and actions that will deliver the greatest carbon and waste reduction gains. So for anyone that's interested, the report will be launched this summer, and I'm happy to come back to the group to present our findings when it's been launched. So that's everything from me, and thank you for listening. Happy to take any questions, and where there are any really specific questions to some of the work, I can share my email address and sort of signpost you to the business support lead and the Love Not Landfill campaign lead. But thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Sarah. Really interesting presentation. Yes, we're very much looking forward to the report due out before summer. In that case, the food report that came out and the link between these circular economy activities, the material flow and climate emissions, carbon emissions, is extremely interesting, of course, for policymakers. So having figures, having data to put beside that would be really very helpful. There are one or two questions that have come into the chat here, looking in particular at the Love Not Landfill campaign. First of those is how exactly you incentivize action within that campaign.
I'm not quite sure what they mean by incentivize, but I guess in terms of encouraging action, it's through the three activities that I mentioned before. So the pop-up shops, which is a really good practical example of where you can come have a look for yourself at the secondhand clothing that's on offer, although that said, the event that we're hosting in June, will it also involve sort of rental organisations, so exploring some of the other ways that you can consume clothing. So really to sort of showcase, it is an option to buy secondhand and use other circular business models if you want to sort of switch up your wardrobe, and sort of encourage repair. So repair can also be fun if you sort of want to sort of customize an item of clothing. So those events, we regularly promote content through our Instagram account, and that's where we sort of made some of our connections with some of the influencers that are quite key in that space. And in the past, we've sort of gone out to schools to talk about the importance of the environmental impact of clothing, and sort of being a bit more mindful about how you buy your clothes. So it's sort of in the context of those three activities, really, which is how we encourage action. And like I said, the target audience is 16 to 24 within that campaign, but I guess sort of similar messaging for other audiences too.
Yep. Okay. And as an extension of this, have you got some sort of figures on the impact? So the before and after of the campaign, particularly in the direct material flow impact, what happens to the textiles? Do we find more of that being separated? Do we find less of it in waste, etc.? So what sort of impacts have there been?
So we've calculated the diversion of clothing from incineration landfill through the campaign. I guess in terms of a deeper understanding, in terms of like material flows, that's where our research comes in, like I talked about at the end of the project, where we're really exploring how much goes in the bin, the destination routes, the volume that's going to charities versus local authority collection through curbside, bring bank, and household waste recycling centres. So that project is allowing us to go fully into detail. But as an organisation, we are currently looking at how we measure our impact across our environmental targets. So it is something that we're increasingly focusing on across all our activities.
Right. Okay, and final question. Are there figures about how many Londoners participate in the activities that you're doing?
So I think I mentioned before that we've had over 10,000 join 3 pop-up events. Obviously, we've got one in June, and be able to report back on that when that's finished. In Repair Week last year, we engaged over 800 people, over 40 events. We've got our 10,000 followers on social media channels. So I guess we're engaging different audiences through the different means. Yeah, so there are some of the figures. And I guess the regular followers will be through our social media accounts.
Okay, thanks very much. So if please continue to put questions in the chat, but we'll now bring Ola back into the conversation as well. And we've got some more general questions. Obviously, Londoners are very lucky to have an organisation like Re-London there, I think, to support them in this transition. But if you were to try to give some advice for a city anywhere in Europe to start the process towards encouraging a more circular textiles material flow within their city, what do you think would be one starting activity that they should implement?
Sorry, was that aimed at me?
It's aimed at both of you, really. So please, Sarah, you go ahead first.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question? I didn't catch the first bit.
Yeah, so if a city anywhere in Europe is interested in trying to promote a circular textiles material flow value chain within their city, what do you think is the most important starting activity that they can undertake?
Well, I think one of the most useful, I'm quite biased because I work in research, but the textiles material flow analysis that we've done has really highlighted some things that we already knew, but it's also sort of drawing our attention to some things that we will likely start to focus a bit more on. So I think sort of mapping out your material flows and understanding where clothes are coming from, how they're coming into the city, how they're moving across, and where they're ending up is a really good place to understand then where you need to focus your efforts. So again, like I said, I'm quite biased given my role, but it's really helped us to understand where the problem areas and where the opportunities are, I guess, to support the transition to a circular city. And the material flow analysis that we produce for food and then we're doing for textiles, you know, they are aimed to be able to be replicated. So, you know, you can sort of look at the London one and see how it might apply to your city, sort of thinking about some of the nuances with your system. But I won't speak for too long, I'll let Ola.
Well, that was going to be a follow-up question of mine, actually, exactly, because of course, doing something like that, it can be quite complex work for a city administration. Is that something that you think cities can manage on their own? Is it something that they would always need expert support in doing?
The technical analysis, I guess it depends on the capabilities within your organization, but we found it useful to sort of partner with other organizations. So we've worked with the UCL and Circular Economy for their sort of expertise on the analysis, but then London's played a really huge role in sort of stakeholder engagement and making sure that we're speaking to the right people and that we can sense check some of the sort of official government data that that we're using, just to see, you know, how does that sound on the ground? So I think it does help to sort of collaborate to bring in those different areas, and it allows everyone to sort of really focus on their areas of expertise. But I guess if you've got the capability and capacity within your organization, you could start with a small scale material flow using sort of examples from other cities.
Great. Okay, Ola, maybe to bring you in this, and knowing circular economy's work, obviously, I'm sure you very much agree with Sarah's analysis on this. Are there any other starting steps that you would think city administration can take in the journey towards a circular textiles sector?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking more from a well, of course, material flow analysis, like baseline assessment, discover where you're at, which, as Sarah was just saying, also depends on the, you know, capabilities and capacities within the city's team to tackle a topic like that. Collect data, because we also cannot do it ourselves. We always work with partners to get access to most relevant and reliable data sources to be able to calculate, yes, the material flows. But actually, I was thinking, you know, in Europe, if we would take a helicopter view on textiles, what we are doing is we are procuring a lot, we are consuming a lot, and we are disposing of a lot of textiles. This is basically what we do. We pretty much do not repair as much as we used to. And we do not recycle as much as we would like to. You know, people say, oh, we cannot recycle our way out of it, but we're really far away from anything like that. Maybe another activity we do with textiles is we also incinerate a chunk of textiles. So pretty much that's going to be more or less the result of a material flow analysis. And then I think, for example, looking at the Netherlands, what is difficult to change is that the cost of the labor, and looking at activities like resale and repair, there needs to be some sort of incentive to conduct them. So, you know, London is a great example of an organization doing that. In Amsterdam, there's going to be, you know, Makers Unite or a Kringloop, like very different social enterprises and charities taking care of this, usually mobilizing people distance from the labor market and finding opportunities for them within repairs or resale or sorting. But I think, you know, maybe it's interesting to reflect whether that's long-term a sustainable solution. Because frankly, if we've got access to a lot of cheap textiles, repairing them for a high price is not often a viable solution for the consumer. And we are all consumers after all. So I think this is not always going to be possible from city perspective, but I think lobbying for changes in the legislation that would allow for, you know, a higher sort of tax on new textiles, which hopefully the extended producer's responsibility is going to bring. And then also being able to lower the costs of the labor by some sort of tax evasion on circular practices like repair and resale, because otherwise our consumption patterns, it's going to be really hard to improve something for a bigger population with just small interventions. I think to create a bigger movement, we need also these bigger incentives. Well, so that's something that just crossed my mind as an answer to that question.
Very good. Well, actually, that links to one of the questions that we have in the chat now. So from Martin Policar from DGRTD, asking what the business model looks like for the repair SME. And I guess this is referring to your presentation, Sarah, again, about this, about what business model that they had underlying those activities, the cost of repair and how that compares to the cost of new clothes. Could you maybe talk a little about that?
I'm not sure that I'd be able to go into details on cost of repair versus cost of new clothes, but I'm more than happy to put you in touch with our business transformation support lead who works really closely with the businesses. But what I will say is that sort of repair generally within a business, it's sort of seen as a way of sort of improving that relationship with your customers. So if you're buying from them a new item of clothing and you know that you're able to then go back to them and they'll be able to sort of conduct that repair for you, that it's sort of a way of knowing the sort of durability of a product and that they're invested in making a product that's there to last. So but yeah, happy to put Martin in touch with my colleague to talk a bit more about that.
Sounds good. Great. Okay. And another question we have in the chat here from my colleague Helena. How could a city engage textile designers and fashion brands and encourage them to incorporate textile materials in their products? So that's something you've been working on also within this campaign, Sarah.
We have worked with designers and fashion brands to sort of understand a bit more about sort of volumes of clothing, sort of waste volumes, things like that. And some of as part of our research, we're looking at different scenarios. So looking at key points in the system and looking at different ways that it can reduce emissions. But as part of the UK, actually, we have as RAP has the Textiles 2030 commitment, which brings together brands. It's a UK-wide commitment, which brings brands together to sort of commit to this sort of target around fibres and proportion of recycled fibres within their products. So we work with RAP on this, so we join a lot of their working groups, and that's sort of a good way of sort of encouraging businesses to sort of change some of their practices. And I know that there's things like the Textiles Exchange that also have some commitments around recycled content, and we're sort of engaged a bit with them through our work. So yeah, that's sort of how we're working with brands and designers through the work that we do.
Sorry, rookie mistake. I can see unmuted. Okay, another question to you, Ola. You mentioned about textiles being, I think, the poster boy for the linear economy or something along those lines. Is there something unique you think about the textiles material flow in relation to others? Does it present any particular unique challenge, would you say, for cities?
Yeah, so I think as I was trying to frame this, is that in Europe, we're basically looking at the material flows. We're mostly consumers, and then we're mostly just disposing of textiles. And with the growth of the fast fashion phenomenon and the consumption rates only growing for textiles, and also the utilization rates kind of falling down. So we just utilize textiles for a shorter period of time, dispose of them. Or what is an opportunity within that is that also we see that people have a lot of textiles and then they remain kind of still in their wardrobes. So there's a lot of textiles just sitting in people's wardrobes. And that's where many businesses, of course, see and have tapped into an opportunity of rental and the re-commerce. But what also this means is that all of us as citizens, we are a secondhand store. I don't need so much as I used to before to rely on charity stores in my neighborhood to get rid of unwanted textiles, because I'm a charity store. I open an app on my phone and I can, myself, I'm incentivized to actually dispose of these textiles. Well, not dispose, but like share, resell these textiles basically which means that if you're a city and you have a collection, a textile collection bin, which is often run by a private waste management company together with a charity, often there's some sort of business model like that, that's some of the proceedings from the export and sales of the textiles will go towards the charity. But what does it mean? It means that me as a consumer, I'm going to sell my best textiles to, I'm either going to share with my friends, or I'm going to give it to my family, or I'm going to share it, sell it online. And what the collectors and sorters are experiencing today, also collectors that collect textiles in the shops, because of course all the retailers have also a textile bin in the shop these days, is that you just get a lower quality of textiles in the bin, because people, when they see something as high quality, they want to sell it or they want to give it to someone, I don't know, someone they care about. And really the textile bin is sometimes seen as the last resort, which maybe I'm giving you a little bit of an optimistic scenario, because of course there's still a certain part of fraction of textiles that goes into the mixed. And I think in Netherlands, we still don't even collect 50% of textiles into the textile bin. So you get about 50% into the textile bin. That's a mix of good and bad. But the best, I think people really discover that they can, sell it and make money of it. So you're kind of losing you're losing the fraction of the waste that will bring the biggest income potentially to sorting, to sorters. So this is very tricky, but at the same time, it's the uptake of circular business models. So there's good and bad things happening. Well, good and bad. Yeah, there's just different factors here. And I was going to reply to Martin. There was this question, the business model for repairs. Yeah. So I think maybe I think this also, what I was just saying about also applies to repairs. So I think customers will invest in repair only when it comes to highest valuable textile, which is probably like up to 5% of all textiles that we dispose of are the so-called cream. So what collectors, sorters call cream is what they are able to sell in Europe. And that's the highest quality of disposed textiles. And yes, a lot of other things are going to be exported out of Europe. So the repair services, will be hopefully evolving there. Yes. Sorry, I've been talking for a long time.
Very good. In fact, the timing is perfect, Ola. There's a couple of further questions in the chat, but actually what we're going to do now is stop for a short break and then come back to listen to the presentations from the cities themselves about what they're putting into place at the moment. But please have a look at the chat as well. It's a nice, interesting example of a circular fashion show happening in London, which would be great to hear more about. But as mentioned, we're going to have a short break now, 5 minutes. So if everybody could come back by 14:35, and then we will hear from our 3 city presentations. Good. Okay, so speak all shortly. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I hope everyone's managed to come back from the break. We have quite a lot to get through for the second hour of the webinar as well. So we move quickly on to the presentations we have from 3 signatories. The first of these being from Prato, who is going to talk about their circular textile strategy. We have Besnik, who's going to present for us. So Besnik, over to you.
Yeah. Can I share? Yeah, thank you. Okay, just let me share my screen.
Perfect, you can see.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your invitation to join this very interesting webinar. So my name is Besnik Mehmeti, and I work for the city of Prato. Prato is located in North Tuscany. It's the second largest city in Tuscany and the third in central Italy after Rome and Florence. As you can see, Prato is located in the north of Tuscany, as I said, 15 kilometers to Florence. And here you can see an aerial view of Prato. It's very interesting because you can see the city center here, the old city, and Prato, thanks to the growing textile sector from the 40s and 50s, has grown 4 times more than it was originally in those years. So it's a very interesting case of a city, I mean, that has grown a lot thanks to its textile sector. And normally when we speak about the textile in Prato, we speak about, let's say a sector that was doing circular economy much before this term was used or came into fashion, because you are talking about more than 7,000 textile and clothing companies. We have clothing companies from the fast fashion sector, of course, and these companies, textile and clothing companies, are employing more than 21 people in Prato, with a volume of sales of 4 billion euro, more than 4 billion euro, and of which 1.5 billion are exported. And Prato alone represents nearly 3% of the total production in Europe about textiles. Here you can see an image which we use for the Circular City Week in New York, where the textiles from all over the world are collected in Prato. They come from India, from Pakistan, from the United States, from everywhere, from Europe, of course. And then they are sorted by fiber, and so by composition and by color. And then most of these textiles are worked mechanically. I can perhaps show you one of the products. Here is a recipe. You can see with the numbers of this recipe, all the textiles that are shredded and then mechanically transformed in textile, and you have different colors which are then become a final color. So yeah, this is as I said, in the DNA of Prato. But in Prato we have also another example, is a system of treatment plants, water treatment plants. We have the company managing these treatment plants is called GIDA, and they are treating 50 million meters cubic of water per year. And let's say the paradigm here of circular economy is the industrial aqueduct, which is collecting the water from households and making it available for the textile industries. As you know, they need a lot of water for also for dyeing and other processes. So the industrial aqueduct is treating 5 million meter cubics of water per year. As Prato, we participated in the urban agenda for circular economy, in the Partnership for Circular Economy, and we learned in this, as a learning, from this work in the urban agenda was transformed in a in a smart living lab we created in Prato called Prato Circular City, where we are involving stakeholders to let's say to promote the transition towards circular economy, but also to promote the image of Prato as a circular city. Prato has suffered a lot from its image as a textile city. So this this project is about promoting the city. Just a thing that, turning back to the image here, that our companies were quite embarrassed until 10 years ago to mention that they were using used clothes to make new textile. Now, most fashion brands are, pressed by the consumers as well. Of course, they are requesting to have parts of let's say of textiles made of out of the leftovers. So we are I could go very quickly here. Our strategies in Prato, our urban strategies about digital transition, circular transition, environmental transition, and just transition are let's say connected with the sustainable development goals. And I'll go very quickly along these slides, but just to show you that our policies, urban policies in Prato, are informed by the SDGs. And Prato Circular City, we have created 4 different working groups. We call them tables, but they are working groups, and they are dealing with different topics. One of them, and perhaps the most important for us, is the textile and clothing district and industrial symbiosis. But also the other working groups are dealing with management of urban resources, circular consumption, and sustainable urban agriculture. So when we started 3 years ago, nearly 3 years ago, working on this strategy, we tried to, let's say, to list some of the topics to be discussed. And of course, at that time, the end of waste legislation was one of the most important topics, because in Prato we have tons of leftovers from companies, mainly made by synthetic textiles, because the natural textiles are let's say well recycled. But the problem where the synthetic textiles that were considered as a waste once they come at the end of the production process. And this was because still of a problem we have with the end of waste legislation. Then also there are other topics like product traceability, the observatory on labor market, or new business models for the textile and waste. And we were trying also to let's say to orient this let's say this work done in the groups together with the strategies developed by the city. Like we have created we had a financing from the Ministry of Economic Development to establish a house of new technologies, and I'll speak later about that. Or also we are selected as one of the 100 climate neutral and smart cities. So yeah, just to show you some achievements we have reached in 2 years and a half of work. So Prato Industrial Smart Accelerator was financed through funding of the Ministry of Economic Development, and it's a center for technology transfer for companies operating in the textile sector and in the made in Italy sectors in general. And what we are doing here is to put together companies, so we are talking about small, medium companies with a research center, with universities and startups to let's say uptake the Industry 4.0 paradigm. And so we are developing together with companies new products and new services for the textile sector. Main of them also dealing with the circularity, because the traceability has been one of the, let's say, most important objectives the Prato textile district has been following in the last decades. And then another achievement, it's the construction of the textile hub. It will be operative starting from 2026. So it's a treatment plant for the reuse and the recycling of textile waste with a potential, we calculate a potential of 34,000 tons of textile waste per year coming from post-consumer waste for 20,000 tons, and this is a regional, let's say, need we have for the recycling of clothes, and 14,000 tons from of the pre-consumer waste, which is leftovers from textile companies, and this represents only half of the leftovers we have in Prato, in the city. So, with the textile hub, we are not even able to let's say accomplish all the or to achieve all the needs we have in Prato for the pre-consumer waste. Another achievement is the participation of Prato in the EU mission, the city's mission, let's say. So we are part of the mission, and we are working now to design the climate city contract, the action plan, the investment plan. But in the meantime, we have received an extraordinary, let's say, an extraordinary contribution from our government, and part of this contribution is also, let's say, is also allocated to the energy efficiency of the textile companies. So there are 4 million out of 10 million euros that are allocated for this for the environmental transition of textile companies. And we are working as well to set up renewable energy communities in the industrial areas. We have 2 main industrial areas in Prato. You can see just an aerial view of one of them. And then about just transition.
1 more minute.
Yeah, I'm coming to the end. We have been working with the Tuscany region to start a memorandum of understanding to support the training system in Prato and accompany textile companies in their digital and green transition. This is very important for us, and as you can see, we have involved thoroughly all our stakeholders in this effort, because we need the textile sector, to update their skills and competencies to face digital and green transition. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. And sorry having to rush you at the end there.
No
because we have very little time, I'm afraid we don't have the opportunity for direct questions, but please do put those in the chat, and hopefully Vesnik will be able to answer those here, or of course we can do this afterwards as well. But really interesting to hear what's going on, and of course seeing Prato from a very different angle from many other cities, given the size of the textiles industry that's operating within the city boundaries itself. Okay, but we're going to move across now to another city, to Malmö, where we have a presentation from Emma. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Simon. So my name is Emma, and I work for the environmental department in City of Malmö. I work mainly on circular purchasing and procurement. But before I went introvert and facing inwards in the organization, I was more extroverted and did, for example, work with campaigns for more sustainable circular textile choices. I will just tell you a little bit about the campaigns. It will be a very down-to-earth, straightforward presentation. The campaigns also include textile collection. I will tell you a little bit about our facility Siptex, which is a sorting facility that we have in Malmö since 2 years, and just summarize some lessons learned, thoughts, ideas, and also a little bit about the next step. So we started already 2015, which when I started thinking about this presentation, I thought it was like, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, but it's already been almost 8 years. So we started with a campaign called Go Malmö, Green Options Malmö. It was a part of our Fair Trade City work, and also we had funding from EU to work with sustainable consumption, and we had the Siptex project. So we rented an unoccupied store in the main shopping street, and also for the second campaign we had part of a sustainability store also located in the main shopping street, because we wanted to be where people were shopping and are shopping. We had a map with 60 shops in the city center, but also where you could repair your clothes, swap clothes, etc. We had an exhibition during these 2 campaigns with like 4 steps of sustainable textile consumption. I don't know, you remember back then we didn't really talk about circular economy that much, so it was more focused on sustainability, but of course we had circular aspects of the campaigns. So we talked about if you want to consume new, you could buy organic, fair trade, recycled clothes. You could circulate your clothes. If you don't want them anymore, you should love your clothes and also take care of the clothes you already have. And at least you should collect your clothes and leave them for recycling. We also made a lot of activities during these campaigns. We don't only want to talk about sustainability and circularity. We want to get the citizens engaged. So we had clothes swapping, we had like repair cafes, we had tours in the center. So really trying to like activate the people visiting and so on. And both these campaigns lasted for about a month, and we also had also the shops did events on their own during these campaigns. Then in 2017, as a part of Siptex, well, I will touch upon soon, we did like a textile tour with a focus on collection of textiles, because that's what the Siptex process and project is about. And we wanted to know a little bit more, how do the citizens like to leave their textiles for sorting? So we tried for open venues like the city hall, city library, etc. But we also tested like for closed venues. For instance, we had collection point at IKEA, also, but some other big companies in Malmö, to see if people rather leave their worn out textiles at their working place. We got actually a lot of press during this campaign, and also we got a lot of clothes. We actually have to go to different places and empty the containers every day, because a lot of people wanted to leave their clothes. And the clothes that were collected there went to a Siptex facility. Back then it was not yet placed in Malmö, but the technique was tested in another city of Sweden. And it's automatic sorting of textile fibers. So this technique uses like infrared light, and they can sort textile by like 95% cotton, 5% polyester in one bin, and 90% cotton and 10% polyester in one bin. So it's kind of like a missing link for closing the loop in textiles. And since 2 years ago, since 2 years, it's placed in Malmö, and it's run by the municipal-owned waste company. And when the when the fibers have been sorted, it's sold as something called refab for mechanical or chemical recycling of clothes. It's also downcycled some of the textiles to insulation and things like that. But it's working really well, and Siptex are selling a lot of the fibers they get in. So it's business model that has proven this work. And the last campaign we did, it was only 2 years ago, so it's a little bit more recent. There we wanted only to stress like one part of a more sustainable circular behavior. So we called the campaign Love Your Clothes. When we discussed this before the campaign, I wasn't sure that I wanted to ask people to love their things, but in the end, I mean, that's what we need to do. We need to love our clothes and we need to take care of them. And we didn't have like any money to do this campaign, so we used our citizens. I shouldn't say that. We wanted the citizens as messenger for this campaign. So we asked them to send pictures and tell their story about the piece of clothes that they really love and that they keep using and that they're repairing, etc. And we only did this campaign in social media. And at the same time, we also did, once again, a collection campaign, because still there isn't like centralized collection point in Malmö. And it's not the same in every city in Sweden, but there is a discussion ongoing about producer responsibility for textiles. And when that's not sorted yet, no one really wants to start collecting. So that's a lot of citizens talked to us and really wanted to be able to leave textiles. And so we did a campaign together with Siptex, but also together with an NGO that has some secondhand stores. Yeah, because we all know it's the best if the clothes can be reused instead of recycled. So the things that were collected, I think about 70% of them were sold again, and 30% went directly to Siptex and for recycling. So some summary discussion, like I say, the producer responsibility, it's lingering. There's been an investigation, but that was already now 2-3 years ago. And as you know, in 2025, textiles should be collected separately. So we're waiting to see what will happen there. And I guess a trend that we can see in Sweden, but also in Malmö, is that there has been a lot of focus on textile and climate last couple of years. I think, yeah, secondhand shops there is a lot in Malmö. There's also in the big shopping malls, even have secondhand stores these days. And there's also really been a shift from sustainable consumption to more like circular choices, I would say. I wouldn't talk about consumption really. Say something about the results. It's really difficult to measure when you are doing campaigns targeted at the citizens. Of course, we know how many people saw our campaign. We know how much textile we collected, but it's difficult to say if they changed their behavior, etc. Happy to discuss this a little bit more in the breakout groups. Just saying something about what's next. Of course, we also have environmental programs, plans, etc. Here you see 2 of the goals. We have one that relates to this, and it's about consumption-based greenhouse gas emissions for the citizens. And what we have done there is, together with the Stockholm Environment Institute, we now have we now know what consumption-based emissions looks like for the citizens. So that's good. And we know that textile is about 4% of their emissions. We will have an internal focus. Yeah, I will, 30 seconds. internal focus on textiles. We've been working a lot with procurement and circular procurement, but not really digging into textiles. So we'll do that. And also consumer goods and then textiles will be part of our circular economy roadmap that we are creating now. And yeah, just contact me for more info. We'll see also each other in the breakout room. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emma. And sorry for rushing you because this is so interesting what you're doing in Malmo, of course. But yes, hopefully there's an opportunity in the behavioral change and campaigns working group to talk through that. But now we move across to our third presentation. We've talked there about campaigns, behavioral change. We've had the strategic view from Prato. We're now going to look at the nitty-gritty of sorting and collection in a country where the 2025 target is not there. It's rather 2023 already in Finland. And so we have Anna from Lapinranta, who will talk a little bit about the new systems in place there. So over to you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Anna Vuori. I'm working at the city of Lappeenranta on circular economy projects. Lappeenranta is in southeastern Finland. I'm telling you about recycling and sorting of textiles in the South Karelia province, in our province, and maybe in Finland in general. This presentation is prepared by South Karelian Waste Management and Miss Mari Ilvonen, so I show you very shortly some basic lines about the company. Just, I hope, yes, it goes on. Etelä-Karjalan jätehuolto, South Karelian Waste Management Company, covers 9 municipalities. City of Lappeenranta is one of them. And here are the numbers for inhabitants and households and summer cottages that we have, of course, many of here. And numbers of personnel and sales of the company. Here is South Karelian province and city of Lappeenranta. You can maybe see it's about in the middle of the province. Some aerial pictures of the area of South Karelian Waste Management Center. Here just general picture of the site. It's rather near of the city of Lappeenranta. And the sorting sites and boxes for household and construction waste. Also, we have a biogas plant for a few years now. We produce biogas from collected biowaste and sludge from water management plants and use the biogas for transport fuel. And of course, the company offers waste collection services for the households, like this multi-compartment container. And we have plenty of sorting stations and now also with containers for textiles. But now for the textiles. Yes, Finland is an early bird for the collection of textiles. The EU legislation obligates to organize textile waste separate collection 2025, but in Finland we started this in the start of this year. So we have a short experience of about 3 months, not very long experience, but something already. In the South Karelia, we have at the moment 11 reception sites for textile waste. And then we have 2 cooperating partners who make the pre-sorting of the textile waste. Simon Wirth and Kymenlaakson Jäte, it's a waste company on the neighboring province. And then I have a few words also about the final processing in Paimio in southwestern Finland, where is the first kind of end-of-life textile pilot refinement plant in Finland. But now how the collection is organized. Here is Finland and here is our province. As I said, we have 11 collection sites at the moment where households can bring textiles, and 2 partners who pre-sort the waste, Saimaan Virta and Kymenlaakso Waste Management. And they sent part of the material to Southwest Finland into Paimio municipality, where is the refinement pilot plant of textiles. They receive textile waste also from other areas in Finland. Here are some examples of the containers that are used in collection. But how about the sorting in practice? At the households, if the material is not recyclable, it goes to dry waste and it's used for energy production. If textile material is recyclable, it must be taken to these sorting stations. We have 11 at the moment in our province. And of course, if the material is good quality, so good that it could be reusable, you can take it, for example, to second-hand shop or sell it by yourself. It's of course the first option. From these sorting stations, the material goes to either Saimaan Virta or Kymenlaakso Waste Center, where it will be pre-sorted at both places. At Saimaan Virta, they take the best material off to sell it in their second-hand shop, and after that, part of the good material goes to local partners for further use, for example, to handicrafts or artists, and rest of the material goes to dry waste for energy production. And the process is about the same in Kymenlaakson Waste Management Company. They take best of for their shop, second-hand shop. Part of the material will be sent to Southwest Finland in Paimio refinement plant, and the rest goes to dry waste. So this is a practical picture how it goes at the moment. And now I have some words of this textile refinery plant in southwestern Finland. I'm not from there, but I'm visiting there, so I know something, but I'm not an expert of this. There again, at first they sort coming material by hands or by optical scanners, and then they have kind of mechanical fiber opening process and devices for that. The fiber can be used as a material for industry. They sort the material to cellulose like cotton, linen, or viscose, wool, mixed fibers, mixed material, or synthetic materials. And at the moment, only the cellulose and wool fiber can be reused in industry. There's markets for this, and the other material has not markets for further use at the moment. So it's a challenge. And I hope there will be potential. There is potential, of course, but at the moment, this is a challenge in Finland. Now I have some pictures of refinery plant. Here is the big device, a machine, kind of production line, which tears and cuts the textile open to smaller smaller parts, and also it takes off buttons, etc., smaller parts of textiles, and cuts.
Sorry, we're going to have to go quite quickly to finish off,
yes,
because we have the
yes. All right, to smaller and smaller pieces until it's just very fine-grained fiber. Here's an example of a cotton fiber kind of bale or roll. And this can be used for further use, for example, to make new dress or cloth or fabric. So it's kind of journey from cloth to cloth. Shortly, some sorting instructions, they are rather strict because of the fact that at the moment only some material can be used. But of course, we get all kinds of material in containers, and it must be pre-sorted. More information here, and that was all. Very quick presentation. If you have something to ask, I can try to answer in chat, or if we have in later time for that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Anna. Yeah, I'd have many, many practical questions to this. That's a really interesting presentation that you're going through, and I'm sure the others do as well. But we are going to have to move along. We've got a slightly shorter period now for our breakout rooms. But let me pass across quickly to Dominic from ICLE's side, who will introduce this session and how it's going to work. So Dom, over to you quickly.
No, muted, there you go. Yeah, so we, for the next session, have an opportunity to join one of 3 breakout rooms, which are based on the presentations that you've just heard from the cities. And really it's a question of free choice for you, whichever one has piqued your interest the most, whichever one you feel may resonate the most, and the intention is that within those breakout rooms we further discuss what we've heard, an opportunity to share your thoughts and experiences, and maybe ask direct questions to Besnik, Emma and Anna on what we've heard. So the 3 rooms are kind of broken down into the strategic side. So how can you embed circular textiles into your city strategy? The more kind of consumer facing side, and then the more practical collection side. So I think Chiara has created
I seem to have lost Dom. Chiara, do you want to explain how this is working? Or are you assigning us directly?
Yes, no, so everyone is going to join the rooms that they prefer based on their interest, and you will find, yeah. Sorry, I realized that people in the room now are joining the breakout. Yeah, so please feel free to join the breakout rooms that you prefer. And once everybody's in, we will have 15 minutes for discussion.
Sounds good. So we'll come back at 3:30. We'll have a 5-minute wrap up, and we'll finish a tiny bit late.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, can you hear me?
Ciao, Besnik.
Ciao, ciao. So I'm in the first room, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, circular economy, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you there.
Very good. Hi.
Hi, Besnik. Nice presentation. I saw a lot of things that I saw live also in Prato, so.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Are you joining a group, Igor?
Yeah, I'm basically staying. I don't see the link. How can I join?
Which one would you like? Because I can put you in either circular
breakout.
textile
No,
strategy.
it's okay. I will join the first one. Okay, I found it.
Very good.
See you later.
See you in a bit. Anyone else still in the room struggling to make this work? I can see we have Anna, Elin, Sigrun. So welcome back, everybody. Sorry, as always, for having to break off discussions. I know that it's never long enough in those breakout rooms, but in any case, we've slightly run over time in any case, so I don't want to keep anybody much longer. But it'd be useful to have a quick wrap-up round, just 1 minute per working group to give us a little taster of the types of things you've been discussing within those groups. And I think my three colleagues are primed to give this review. So first off, on the strategic group, is it Chiara to give the quick debrief?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. So I'll be very brief. The discussion was very interesting and unfortunately too short. Many things emerged specifically regarding the strategy. Porto, for instance, they don't have like a circular economy strategy for textiles, but they do have a circular economy roadmap for 2030. And they would be interested in this in textile as a flow. And then Pavel from the Commission, like he highlighted that there are like two main elements needed for the transition to circularity for textile in premise regulation, so ensuring eco-design requirements and eco-modulation in EPR systems, so anything that can ensure that recycled textile actually is used and giving intensity to designers and producers, and then investment as a second element in addressing the technology and infrastructural gaps that there are. Then also Prato in circular economy mentioned that there are a lot of like pushes towards circularity in the textile sector, both from the consumers demanding for circular actions to businesses and the businesses themselves experimenting with circular design. And I think my time is up. I will pass now the floor to Malen.
Yeah, so in our breakout, so we first started introducing ourselves, and then that's how we kicked off the discussion a little bit. So Sala mentioned that in Lithuania they are doing they found out that I said it wrong, right? Like, okay, but they found out that citizens they would like to engage more in this sort of repair, reuse, and other types of sharing economy activities. But one of the barriers is that they perhaps don't know like where to go or where to start. So then we started talking about this developing a map where this sort of services can be mapped. And this is, for example, in Italy, in one of the municipalities in Genova, if I'm not mistaken, it's something that they perhaps are kicking off. So then, well, we jumped into perhaps what are the lessons learned or challenges when it comes to citizen engagement. And the things that worked and they do not work. So, and building connections. So Sarah mentioned building connections is the first step. And that it's a challenge when you just start, but now throughout time and knowing what the circular economy is about, it's rather easier now to pinpoint to business cases and sharing best practices. And then Emma mentioned that it's not easy to communicate to citizens all at once because there's only so much information the citizens can take, but yeah, and also to reach to already existing groups when it comes to passing on information and engaging citizens groups. So yeah, we discussed many things, but perhaps those are the main challenges. The main highlights.
Perfect, thanks, Malen. Yes, it was Ljubljana rather than Lithuania, but
yeah,
anyway, clarified in the chat. Very good. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to our last group, and I think it's Dominic to report on that, if I'm not mistaken. No, Simon. Sorry, I am mistaken. Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, so our group was on textile collection, sorting and recycling. So we had participants from La Peranta, from Mikili, from Oslo, and from Guimarães in Portugal. So first we took stock about like who was collecting textile at the moment. So in Finland, that's the case. In Oslo, they are collecting textile, but treatment is being progressively implemented. And in Guimarães, they are doing a study to kind of identify the textile streams, let's say, and see what kind of system they can set up. Then we discussed what are the different steps to implement such a collection system, and it was made clear that the most important first is to identify what should be the processor to have a treatment facility. That was the first step to take into account. And last but not least, we discussed what were the different challenges, the barriers. So the main issue is Yeah, so one issue is the fact that even though we recycle textile, there is little outlet for recycled fibers. There is too much recycled textiles, and what we want is produce less waste. That's one first thing. And then one second issue, which is quite of a big issue, is that the price of virgin fibers is way cheaper than recycled fibers. So that's a major barrier for making clothes out of recycled fibers. So that was mostly it. Thanks.
That was quite a range of topics, obviously. So thanks very much to the three of you and also to everybody for their engagement in those discussions. Clearly, we can only put our toes in the water for these points. And this is why I've dropped in the chat there our contact sheet. This is something that we keep from as a voluntary sheet to allow you all to get in touch with each other. So it has contacts there for the signatories and the support partners, at least those who have agreed to share those contacts publicly. So have a look there. If you're not in it, add your name, but also this is a way that you can get in touch with some of those who have spoken today and maybe share some more of those ideas in depth. Okay, but let's come to the end of the webinar. I just want to very quickly share with you a final slide, if I can find it. 1 second. All right, okay, so here I think we have a sneak preview of some of the upcoming activities that we are engaging with within the Circular Cities Declaration. So I mentioned already that we're planning now the CCD report 2023 at the moment. We haven't finalized those details because we've been concentrating on completing the last year's report, but it looks likely at the moment that we will set an autumn deadline for the submission of reports from signatories. We're still working on the template, whether that needs adjustment from last time or not, plus also if there are some issues that we want to dig into in more detail within the report published this year. The actual publication itself is likely then to be at the end of this year or early next year, so maybe a year after the one from 2022. More details on that in due course and how you can all contribute to it. There will be further webinars this year. We're looking at organizing one probably before the summer break, looking specifically at upcoming Horizon Europe calls, of which there are a number related to circular economy in cities and regions, and also to dig in more detail into the CCD report planning process as well. So we'll share more details about that in due course. Then we will look to have another thematic webinar later this year, probably in autumn. The precise topic for that will be determined by an email poll that we will send around after this webinar. There will be another newsletter sent around to all signatories and support partners also before summer in June. So if you have any content, which you would like to include within that newsletter, so interesting examples, things going on, opportunities for others to engage with, for example, please let us know and we can include it within that newsletter. My colleague Jon will write around to ask that in any case in advance. There's also a conference coming up very shortly in Bergamo in Italy, in April, where we still have one final free pass to provide. If any partner is interested, any signatory, any support partner is interested in potentially participating, then we may be able to assist with a free pass for that. If you have any further announcements yourselves, you can either share these in the chat or you can share it after the event, and we will circulate it amongst the group. Okay, and then that is it. Sorry, I'm getting a comment from Jon. There's also going to be a newsletter in April that we'll send this next week, but that's not going to focus on the report. So I don't think there's availability to share any content with that at the moment. Good. Okay, so we come to the end. I would like to thank once again all of the presentations. We had some really interesting stuff presented today, and of course for the engagement of everybody within those discussion groups as well. As mentioned, we will share the recording as well as all the presentations and minutes, and we will include the chat content within that as well. We'll put this on the website, but we'll also share it with everybody by email. Good. So thank you for your attention and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Good day.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.